இந்தியாவிற்கு வருகை தந்துள்ள அமெரிக்க அதிபர் ட்ரம்ப் செய்தியாளர்களை சந்தித்து வருகிறார். அதன் நேரலை காட்சிகளை இப்பொழுது பார்க்கலாம்.
We have very few people with it, and the people that have it are, in all cases, I have not heard anything other. Maybe there's something new, because for 2 days I haven't been seeing too much of that news, of very much news, because it's been very all-encompassing. We've accomplished a lot here. We had a lot of meetings, as you know. But the people are getting better. They're all getting better. We brought in some Americans from a ship because it was really the right thing to do, and they're in quarantine. And we think they'll be in very good shape very, very soon. We discussed a lot of different elements. We actually discussed the coronavirus, and at this moment, India doesn't have much of a problem, they feel. It wasn't expressed that they did, which is great. And I think that whole situation will start working out. A lot of talent, a lot of brain power is being put behind it. $2.5 billion we're putting in. I see that Chuck Schumer criticized that he thought it should be more. And if I gave more, he'd say it should be less. It's automatic, with these characters. They're just not good for our country. If I gave more, he'd say it should be less. But that's what they do. In the meantime, that's all they can do. They're not getting anything done. We have so many things we could get done. We could so easily do prescription drug. Last year was the first year in 51 years where prescription drug prices went down. But we could drive them down really well if we had the Democrat votes. We need some additional votes. We would really drive them down, as you know. So with that, I think what we'll do is take some questions, and we'll go to a nice state dinner, and then we go home. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Mr. President, you just addressed coronavirus, so I will put that aside for the moment. You tweeted about Justice Sotomayor yesterday, saying that she and Justice Ginsburg should recuse themselves from future cases dealing with the administration. What is the basis for your opinion on that?
Well, it's very obvious. I always thought that, frankly, that Justice Ginsburg should do it because she went wild during the campaign when I was running. I don't know who she was for. Perhaps she was for Hillary Clinton, if you can believe it. But she said some things that were obviously very inappropriate. She later sort of apologized. I wouldn't say it was an apology, but she sort of apologized. And then Justice Sotomayor said what she said yesterday. You know very well what she said yesterday. It was a big story. And I just don't know how they can not recuse themselves for anything having to do with Trump or Trump-related. The right thing to do is that. Now, as a Supreme Court justice is a different standard, but at the same time, I think it's a higher standard in a certain sense. So they'll have to decide what to do. But her statement was so inappropriate when you're a justice of the Supreme Court, and it's almost what she's trying to do is take the people that do feel a different way and get them to vote the way that she would like them to vote. I just thought it was so inappropriate. Such a terrible statement for a Supreme Court justice.
What was inappropriate about the statement? I'm not an attorney, so I can't really look into these.
Well, you know what the statement was, John.
She seemed to criticize the White House for running to the Supreme Court at the drop of a hat to seek a stay.
No, I don't think that was it. But I think what she did say is she's trying to shame, the way I look at it, she's trying to shame people with perhaps a different view into voting her way. And that's so inappropriate. So let's see what happens. We have things, whether or not they recuse themselves, both. Look, Justice Ginsburg, during my campaign, I protested at the time. She apologized in a very minor form. And what Justice Sotomayor said yesterday was really highly inappropriate. And everybody agrees to that. Virtually everybody. I've seen papers on it. People cannot believe that she said it. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The intelligence community believes that Russia is trying to meddle in the 2020 election. Do you agree with their assessment? And what is your message to Vladimir Putin about potentially interfering regardless of the candidate they support?
Well, what I'm reading, and again, I'm over here for the last number of days, but they went to see Bernie, and they told Bernie about something having to do with they want Bernie to win. They did not tell me. Intelligence never told me, and we have a couple of people here that would know very well, they never told me anything about that. And it was sort of a strange thing that they went to Bernie And now I find out, if I believe what I read in some of your documents and some of your papers, that it was highly exaggerated. And frankly, I think it's disgraceful. And I think it was leaks from the Intelligence Committee, House version, and I think that they leaked it. I think probably Schiff leaked it, but people within that, Schiff leaked it, in my opinion. And he shouldn't be leaking things like that. That's a terrible thing to do. But basically, they would like to see Bernie is probably winning, and looks like he's winning, and he's got a head of steam, and they maybe don't want him for obvious reasons. So they don't want him, so they put out a thing that Russia's backing him. This is what they do. I've gone through it for a long time. I get it. I get the game better than anybody. And that's the way it is. Terrible thing to say. And they didn't say it about me. I will say this. Somebody leaked it in intelligence, but nobody ever told me that. We have Ambassador O'Brien in the audience someplace, and he can tell you that this was never discussed with us. So I think it's terrible. They ought to stop the leaking from Intelligence Committee. And if they don't stop it, I can't imagine that people are not going to go after them and find out what's happening. Yeah, please.
But do you believe...
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. President, this is Medhuva from Indian TV News, AGP
Yes.
News. And you're trying to get a peace deal with the Taliban, and India has a growing investment in Afghanistan. So the way the deal is being worked out, what would be India's role and Pakistan's role in the region?
Well, I think India would like to see it happen. I spoke with Prime Minister Modi today, and I think they would very much like to see it happen. And we're pretty close. We'll see what's going on. We've got 2 days now under our belt without violence, or I guess a minimum of violence. And we'll see what happens. But people want to see it. It's very interesting, that one. Everybody's happy about it. Even people that are normally against me, like 99.9% of the time. Because we've been there for 19 years, and everybody would like to see it happen. I was actually surprised. I thought the Schumers of the world would say whatever the opposite is, because that's all they can do, cry and chuck. But people are they're really happy to see that we're trying very hard. We'd bring it down to 8,600, and from there we'll make a decision as to what the final outcome would be. But there's been tremendous praise for the fact that we're doing something. Other administrations have tried to do something. In particular, the previous administration, for a long time, they were never able to get anything done. And we're really serving not as a military force as we are a police force. And we're not a police force. They have to police their own country. We're not a police force. It's like law enforcement. And that's the way it is. So we'd like to, after 19 years, we'd like to bring our young people back home, bring them, that's where they want to be. And we'll always have intelligence there. We'll have other things there. But we'd like to bring them, for the most part, we'd like to bring them back home. We want to watch the area. The area is a hotbed of problems. And when we bring them home, we'll let them know that if something happens, we will hit them so hard. And we could win that easily if I wanted to kill millions of people. I don't want to kill millions of people, innocent people. We could win that very easily. We don't have to act as a police force. We could act as a military force to win, not a military force to just take care of things in that very, very difficult part of the world. It's a very difficult part, very dangerous part of the world. So let's see what happens. So far, so good. So far. But I'm very impressed with the kind of kudos we're getting. Yes, please.
Mr. President, Namaste. I'm Saurabh Shukla. I'm Editor-in-Chief of News Mobile. If you remember, I interviewed you during your last campaign in New Jersey.
Good.
And I asked you this question earlier at that time about a Trump doctrine on fighting out Islamic fundamentalism, which you spoke about, and you discussed with Prime Minister Modi, and you spoke about the Modi-Trump doctrine. So what is your roadmap to fight out Islamic radical terrorism?
Well, I don't think anybody's done more than I have, if you look, because I came in, and if you check your maps and look at Iraq and Syria, it was all over. In fact, they had it painted a certain color. I won't tell you what color.